She unplugged my coffee maker and ordered me to iron my grown son's shirts inside the house. I gave them for free. But in my bag was a $280,000 check she knew nothing about. By the time she discovered it, I wasn't begging for respect. I was changing the locks on my life. Lesson love, without boundaries, becomes permission to be used. The envelope holding a $280,000 cashier's check sat silently on my counter, right next to the coffee maker my daughter-in-law had unplugged again. Chloe preferred her expensive espresso machine, and she made it clear my standard drip brewer wasted precious outlet space. I had given Mark and Chloe the main house 3 years ago, but I had never transferred the attached guest suite, the side entrance, or the wooded backlot behind it. Those remained legally mine, recorded as a separate in-law unit with its own exterior access. I had moved into that smaller space to give them privacy, believing the arrangement would bring peace. Yet, the boundaries only seemed to work one way. Martha, you left your boots by the back door again. Chloe's voice drifted in before she even opened the adjoining door. She walked into my small kitchen, holding my gardening boots by 2 fingers as if they were toxic. It ruins the aesthetic of the patio. Also, Mark needs his shirts ironed by noon. I looked at her, noting the expectant cross of her arms. I didn't argue. I didn't explain that the patio was technically my entrance, or that Mark was 34 and capable of ironing. I simply took the boots, placed them on my mat, and picked up my coffee maker. I will handle my boots, I said, my voice even. And Mark can iron his own shirts. I have errands today. Chloe blinked, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitting together in confusion. But you always do it. I have a brunch date. Have a lovely brunch, I replied, sliding the thick envelope with the check into my leather tote bag. I walked past her, opening the door to my car. I had spent 3 years shrinking my life to accommodate her expanding demands, watching my son fade into a passive echo of his wife's directives. I thought giving them a home would bring peace. Instead, it made them view me as a live-in convenience. That ended today. I turned the ignition, watching Chloe stare at my departing car through the rearview mirror. She had no idea what was actually hidden in my leather bag. My first stop was the hardware store. For 3 years, the door between my suite and the main house remained unlocked. It was supposed to be for emergencies, but Chloe used it as a shortcut to inspect my living space, borrow my supplies, and drop off their laundry. I purchased a heavy-duty deadbolt. When I returned, the house was quiet. I spent 20 minutes installing the new lock on my side of the adjoining door. The solid click of the metal sliding into place was the most satisfying sound I had heard in months. Next, I logged into my bank account. The city had bought the empty wooded acreage behind my suite for a municipal project. $280,000. It was money I never expected, but it offered me something invaluable options. I had spent my entire life working hard, and I deserved this peace. I reviewed the household finances. Out of habit, I had been paying the entire property tax bill, the shared water bill, and the internet. They lived in a house they owned debt-free, while I subsidized their lifestyle. With a few clicks, I removed my bank card from every automatic payment tied to the main house. The property tax notice had always been in Mark's name because he was the legal owner. I had simply been paying it quietly for years. I forwarded the upcoming utility reminders to his email and canceled the shared internet plan, opting for a private hotspot for myself. From now on, the owner of the house would receive the owner's bills. Later that evening, I heard the familiar rattle of the doorknob, then a pause. A louder rattle followed, accompanied by a sharp knock. "Martha, the door is stuck," Chloe called out, her tone laced with irritation. I didn't rush to answer. I placed my teacup on the saucer, walked over, and spoke clearly through the solid wood. It is not stuck. Chloe. It is locked. Locked. Why open up? I need to put the towels in your dryer. My dryer is full, I said calmly. And from now on, we will respect each other's private spaces. Silence hung heavily on the other side. The peace lasted exactly 2 days before the mail arrived. The city had sent a finalized public record notice regarding the land acquisition. Because our mailboxes were clustered together, Chloe often sorted the mail. She brought my letters over that afternoon, but her demeanor had shifted from annoyed to intensely calculated. She knocked on the front door of my suite this time, bypassing the locked interior door. I opened it to find her holding the city notice, the seal already broken. You opened my mail, I stated, not asking a question. I took the envelope from her hands. It looked official. I thought it was about the property taxes. She deflected smoothly, stepping inside uninvited. Her eyes darted around my neat living room. Martha, the city paid you $280,000 for that useless dirt out back. It was my land. Chloe, yes, they bought it. That is amazing news for the family, she exclaimed, her smile bright but entirely devoid of warmth. Mark and I were just talking about how much we need a kitchen renovation, and we really want to upgrade both of our cars. This is perfect timing. I watched her mentally spend money that did not belong to her. She didn't ask what I wanted to do with it. She didn't congratulate me. She simply absorbed it into her own ledger. I was not going to let her greed dictate my future anymore. I am glad you have renovation plans, I said, walking to the counter and sorting the rest of my mail. You and Mark should start saving up for that. Her smile faltered. What do you mean, it's family money? You live on our property. It's only fair you share the windfall. I turned around, meeting her gaze dead on. I gave Mark this property. I own the back lot. The money is mine. Chloe's eyes narrowed, the facade dropping completely. We will see what Mark has to say about this. Mark knocked on my door at 7 o'clock that evening. He looked tired. His shoulders slumped as he stepped into my kitchen. I had just finished making myself a simple roast chicken. The aroma filled the room, a sharp contrast to the tension he brought with him. Mom, he started, rubbing the back of his neck. Chloe told me about the land sale. That is a lot of money. It is, I agreed, pulling a chair out for him. Would you like some dinner? No. Chloe ordered takeout. He sighed, sitting down heavily. He refused to meet my eyes. Look, Mom, Chloe is really upset. She feels like you are holding out on us. We let you stay here in the guest suite and… Stop right there, Mark, I interrupted, keeping my voice gentle but firm. I sat across from him. You let me stay here. I signed the deed of a 4-bedroom house over to you entirely free of charge. I paid to build this small suite so you could have your own space without a mortgage. Mark flushed, looking down at the table. I know, Mom. But Chloe says since the land was originally part of the estate, half of that money should go to the main house. We need a new roof soon. Then you need to budget for a new roof. I took a sip of water. I am not angry with you, Mark, but I am not an endless bank account. I gave you a head start in life. The rest is up to you. She's going to make things miserable. Mom, he whispered, finally looking up. It was the honest truth of a man who had surrendered his backbone to keep the peace. She can only make you miserable if you let her, I replied quietly. As for me, I am setting my own rules now. Mark left without another word. The evening ended quietly, but the tension in the air was incredibly thick. The real test was just beginning. Chloe's retaliation was predictable, aimed entirely at making my daily life inconvenient. On Saturday morning, I walked out to the shared driveway to find her SUV parked diagonally, completely blocking my sedan. When I knocked on the main house door, she answered in her bathrobe, sipping coffee. "Oh, I lost my keys," she said with a careless shrug. "You'll just have to wait. I might find them after my shower." She expected me to argue or plead. Instead, I simply nodded. "Take your time." I walked back to my suite, picked up my phone, and called a local landscaping service. I hired them to clear a separate gravel driveway leading directly from the street to my patio. I had the space, and now I had the funds. I then called a rideshare to take me to the grocery store. I didn't need her permission to move forward. When the landscape crew arrived on Monday with a small excavator, Chloe came running out of the house, waving her arms. "What are you doing? You can't dig up the lawn," she demanded, confronting me as I stood on the porch with my tea. "It is my designated side of the lot. Chloe, I am putting in my own driveway, so your parking habits won't affect my schedule." I explained calmly over the noise of the engine. "You are wasting money. Family money," she shrieked, her composure cracking. "It is my money," I corrected her, "and my driveway." Later that week, the internet in my suite suddenly dropped. A quick check confirmed the router password in the main house had been changed. She thought cutting my access would force me to knock on her door and negotiate. She didn't know I had already purchased a high-speed cellular router for my desk. I continued watching my evening news, entirely undisturbed. She was playing a childish game that I had already decided to quit. The first of the month brought a shift in the atmosphere. For years, I had quietly managed the administrative burdens of the property. I never complained. I simply paid the bills online and filed the receipts. This month was different. I sat on my patio, enjoying the crisp morning air, when Mark came jogging out the back door holding a stack of envelopes. His face was pale. "Mom, the water bill arrived, and the property tax installment," he said, holding the papers out as if they were burning his hands. "They are in my name." "Why are they in my name?" "Because you own the house." "Mark," I answered, placing my book on my lap. "I didn't transfer anything unfairly." I said, "The property tax was already in your name because you own the main house. I only stopped paying it for you. My suite has its own power meter, and my attorney has already started the process of separating the remaining tax assessment for my portion of the property. But it's over $4,000 for the tax alone. And the water is huge. We didn't budget for this," he stammered, panic edging into his voice. "Chloe is furious. She said you are punishing us." "I am not punishing anyone. I am stepping back," I said calmly. "You and Chloe make a combined 6-figure income. You live without a mortgage. Paying your own utilities and taxes is not a punishment. It is called being an adult homeowner." "Mom, please, we just booked a vacation to Mexico. We don't have the cash on hand for the taxes this month. Can't you just cover it with the city money?" I looked at my son, seeing the anxiety in his eyes, but also the entitlement he had slowly adopted from his wife. "No, Mark, I will not." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "If you cannot afford your lifestyle, you need to cancel the vacation. I am no longer your financial safety net." I walked back inside, leaving him standing alone in the driveway. The harsh reality of actual home ownership was finally sinking into his mind. Despite the financial shock, Chloe refused to change her lifestyle. She decided to host a lavish dinner party for her parents and sisters that weekend, an obvious attempt to project an image of success. In the past, she would have expected me to cook the side dishes, polish the silverware, and then quietly retreat to my suite before the guests arrived. On Saturday afternoon, she knocked on my locked door. I opened it to find her holding a massive frozen turkey and a grocery bag. "I need you to prep the bird and make the stuffing," she instructed, thrusting the bags toward me. "My parents are arriving at 6. Make sure the kitchen is spotless when you are done." I did not take the bags. I kept my hands resting on the doorknob. "I am not cooking for your dinner party." Chloe, her jaw dropped. "What? Why not? You have nothing else to do today?" "I have my own plans," I replied smoothly. "And even if I didn't, I am not your personal chef." "You are being incredibly selfish," she hissed, her face turning red. "You are sitting on a fortune, refusing to help your son with his bills. And now you won't even help with a family dinner. My parents will ask where you are." "You can tell them I was busy," I said. "Good luck with the turkey. It takes several hours to thaw." I closed the door, listening to her angry footsteps stomping away. At 5:30, I put on my favorite wool coat, picked up my purse, and walked out to my new driveway. I drove to a quiet, upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I ordered a glass of good red wine and a plate of seafood pasta. I enjoyed every single bite in complete peace, far away from their toxic, ungrateful behavior. Chaos undoubtedly reigned in the kitchen I had left behind. The weeks passed, and the atmosphere at the house grew increasingly hostile. Chloe resorted to slamming doors and playing loud music early in the morning. Mark looked perpetually exhausted, caught between his demanding wife and the sudden reality of his financial responsibilities. They had to cancel their Mexico trip to pay the property taxes, and Chloe blamed me daily. I didn't engage in their drama. I had been quietly busy. The $280,000 from the city, combined with my savings and the expected sale of my suite, was enough to execute my final plan. I had contacted a real estate agent and spent my afternoons touring properties. I found a beautiful, ground-floor condominium in a quiet neighborhood across town. It had a small garden, plenty of natural light, and most importantly, it belonged entirely to me. I purchased it outright using the city payment, part of my savings, and the proceeds I expected from selling my suite. No mortgage, no shared walls with resentful family members. The next step was resolving the property I currently lived on. I owned the guest suite and the remaining plot of land it sat on, while they owned the main house. My attorney had already started the paperwork, and the surveyor finalized the boundary lines that separated my suite and side entrance from the main house. I listed my suite and the adjoining plot for sale. Because of the location and the new independent driveway I had installed, it sold to a quiet, retired couple within 10 days. I didn't announce my plans. I simply began packing my belongings into neatly labeled boxes, stacking them out of sight in my bedroom. I forwarded my mail and scheduled the moving truck. I felt a profound sense of lightness with every box I taped shut. I wasn't just moving out. I was reclaiming my autonomy. The burden of their expectations was slipping away, replaced by the quiet certainty of my own future. I had given them everything they asked for, and now I was finally giving myself exactly what I deserved. The large yellow moving truck backed into my private driveway at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The air was crisp, and the retired couple who bought my suite was scheduled to take possession the following week. The movers worked quickly, loading my boxes and furniture with practiced efficiency. The noise inevitably drew attention. The back door of the main house swung open, and Mark and Chloe walked out. Chloe was still in her pajamas, holding a mug of coffee, her eyes wide with shock. "What is going on?" Mark asked, jogging over to the truck. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I am moving, Mark," I said simply, signing a clipboard handed to me by the foreman. "Moving where?" Chloe demanded, stepping forward, her coffee sloshing over the rim of her mug. You can't just leave who bought the suite. We didn't agree to strangers living on our property. It is not your property, Chloe. It was my property, and I sold it to a lovely retired couple. The lot has been officially divided, I explained, maintaining a calm, conversational tone. I bought a condo across town. You used the city money to buy a condo. Chloe's voice cracked, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The windfall she had spent months trying to manipulate was gone, locked away in real estate she couldn't touch. Yes, I answered. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Mark looked genuinely hurt, but also terrified. He was looking at the reality of maintaining the large house completely unassisted. Because my financial decisions are no longer a family discussion, I told him, looking him in the eye. I gave you a house. Mark, you are a capable adult. It is time you and your wife learn to manage it without my subsidies or my labor. I handed the busy foreman a generous tip and turned purposefully toward my waiting car. My new condominium was a sanctuary of silence. There were no boots tossed carelessly on my porch, no laundry dropped at my door, and no passive-aggressive comments about my coffee maker. I decorated the living room in warm, earthy tones and spent my mornings reading in the small garden. It took 2 months for Mark to visit. When he knocked on my door, he looked older, humbled by the weight of managing his own life. He sat on my sofa, accepting a cup of tea. The new neighbors are very quiet, he noted, looking around. The house feels different without you there. Mom, I imagine it does, I replied gently. Chloe is stressed. We had to take out a small loan to fix the roof, he admitted, staring into his tea. She asked if you might be willing to help out. Just a loan. I felt a brief flicker of pity, but my resolve remained entirely unbroken. I had spent years being their shock absorber, and it had only taught them helplessness. No, Mark, I won't do that, I said, my voice steady and completely devoid of guilt. I love you, but my finances are separate from yours now. You and Chloe need to navigate your own problems. He didn't argue. He slowly nodded, accepting the boundary that was now set in stone. He stayed for another hour, and for the first time in years, we just talked. Not about bills, or chores, or his wife's demands. Just a normal conversation. When he finally left, I walked him to the door and gave him a hug. I locked the door behind him, walked into my pristine kitchen, and plugged in my standard drip coffee maker. The machine hummed quietly. A simple, perfect sound of independence. I poured myself a fresh cup, completely at peace in my new life.